All right. Hi, everybody, and welcome to ALD No Limits. I'm Christie.
And I'm Ken. We're here with a special guest today, everyone. We have the one and only Aaron Gardner with us.
Yay.
Hello, how are you two doing?
Good, doing good.
Great.
We're so happy to have you again. You're our first guest, so yeah.
Well, I'm honored to take part in this. I was so excited to hear that you two were kicking off this podcast. I cannot think of two better people to do it, and you are both just legends in the ALD community. And so I totally support what you're doing, and I'm delighted to be able to take part.
Awesome.
Thanks so much, Aaron. Well, We're here. Our goal is to create a space where every story matters, nobody feels alone, and our journey is told. And as Ken and I were wrapping up yesterday, we were talking about how so many people in the ALD community share similarities and threads, but we also are quite different. So it's so important to kind of talk about all experiences. Nothing's off the table here. Wink, wink. And we're glad to be here. Ken, I wanted to ask, yesterday I heard from a listener who got a little confused about what AMN stands for, the letters AMN. They understood the disease progression, and Aaron will, I assume, talk more about that today. But Aaron or Ken, can you just kind of tell us, what is AMN?
I'll go first, and I can never pronounce it correctly. Adrenoleukodystrophy.
Good job. I was asking you to pronounce it because I can't. So I
either.
What do you think, Aaron? Did he do it okay?
The way that I usually describe it to people is that adrenoleukodystrophy, or ALD, is kind of the broader disease or disorder title or category, and then AMN is a subset. It's one of the phenotypes or one of the forms of the broader disorder. And so AMN is adrenomyeloneuropathy. And if you break down the word, so adreno, because it impacts the adrenal glands, myelo, because it affects the myelin sheath that is like this coating around the nerves,
right.
And then neuropathy, because it involves the central nervous system. It can cause neuropathy and neuropathic pain in the feet and legs. And so it's interesting that, the phenotype title or name kind of describes what it is. It's just, it's a long word. And so, we break it down, AMN.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know. We really should have did the What is ALD episode yesterday.
And it's interesting too, because we usually we talk about ALD, but when I talk about the ALD community, I sometimes say like the ALD/AMN community, but AMN is kind of a subset of ALD.
Under the umbrella. That's right.
Yeah, the umbrella. So here's what I think we shall do. We're going to go ahead and have you tell us your story, and we'll go from there.
Awesome. Thank you. Like I said, I really appreciate the opportunity to share. I have a very extensive family history with ALD. We have charted it back through at least 5 generations of my family. It goes back to at least to my great-grandmother. And this is through my mother's side of the family. And we know that she must have had it because she had 2 sons who both had AMN, my grandfather and my great uncle. And then each of their respective families also carried on the disorder as well. And so my mother and her 2 sisters, all 3 of them are symptomatic females with ALD. And then I have a couple of male cousins who also have AMN. One is symptomatic. The other one is really like just in the beginning stages of presenting with symptoms. They're both a little bit younger than I am.
I was going to say, how old are they? But they're a little younger.
I'm actually not sure on their exact ages. One is in his late 20s, and the other one is in his mid 30s.
Okay.
And then I have a sister who is a pre-symptomatic female with ALD. Her son, my nephew, has ALD. And then my daughter as well is a pre-symptomatic female with ALD as well. And then going over to more extended family, my mom's cousin, she was also a symptomatic female with ALD. And then she had a son who was my second cousin, and he ended up developing childhood cerebral ALD, and he passed away when he was 12 years old. And so it was actually his passing that was the first family sign of like conclusively showing like this is ALD and not something else. Because prior to that, both my grandfather and my great uncle had been misdiagnosed with MS. And so they had just been living with the understanding that they had MS. And so it wasn't until my second cousin died that they were like, oh my gosh, this is a genetic thing in the family. And that's how we all initially received the correct family diagnosis.
Got it. And when was that? And I'm so sorry about your cousin.
I think that it was, I'm not sure on the exact year. It was before I was born, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. So I was not diagnosed with ALD as an infant. They knew about the family history by that time, but they didn't have genetic testing that we have today. There certainly was not any kind of newborn screening or anything like that. And so basically what they did when I was an infant was they checked my very long chain fatty acid levels, which is one of the tests that they use to determine a diagnosis of ALD. But at the time, they said that my levels were kind of borderline, like they were not conclusively elevated very long chain fatty acid levels. And so the doctors who were not specialists in ALD, they told my parents, he doesn't have it. Like if he had it, the levels would be so, conclusively elevated for that disease marker. And so they basically told my parents, he doesn't have it. You don't ever have to worry about this ever again. And that's what my parents did. Like they just went through the rest of my childhood just thinking, he just doesn't have it. And so it wasn't until I started developing neurological symptoms into adulthood that, we were able to start pursuing that. And I can speak more to that.
Wow. What an interesting diagnostic journey you've been on. Having, so many instances in your family that showed up, but then kind of your parents being told, wow, you don't have to worry about it. That's really interesting.
And it definitely wasn't a good thing because I was living with undiagnosed Addison's disease or adrenal insufficiency.
Right.
Honestly, probably since late boyhood or early teenage years. And I was not diagnosed until I was 29.
Wow.
And
Did you get dark skin complexion at all? Like the darker skin, like mine?
Yeah. I mean, I shared a picture with you, Ken. You can pull up the picture of my wife and me. Yeah. This is, I think my wife and I were dating at this time. I was probably, let me think, how old was I when this picture was taken? I think I was 26 years old when this picture was taken. And you can see I am just like rail thin, like skin and bones. Yeah. I think I weighed about 115 pounds when this picture was taken. And for those who don't know, one of the, really strong signs of Addison's disease is like very skinny because it doesn't allow your body to gain weight. And if it's not being treated. And so, I mean, my skin is kind of darker. I've got other pictures where like in the summer where like my skin is really, really, really dark. But yeah, I mean, I was very, very unhealthy. I used to get sick all the time. Like I was really acutely ill just through having untreated Addison's disease. And so what ended up happening was my wife's background is in medicine. She is a charge nurse in oncology infusion. And so it was like 2 years into our marriage, she was just seeing some of the neurological symptoms that I had, that I was starting to have balance issues, spasticity, bladder issues, other things too. And she was aware of the family history, and she was like, you need to go to the doctor and you need to, try to get to the bottom of this, mention the family history, see if anything may be going on. And honestly, she probably ended up saving my life, because I was first diagnosed with Addison's disease, because as I think you talked about last week, Ken, it's a pretty straightforward test to get that diagnosis. We did the ACTH stimulation test, and I got a phone call like the next week and from the doctor's office, and they were like, you need to get onto corticosteroids today. And I was like, and we were actually out of town visiting my in-laws. And I was like, oh yeah, I'll do this when we get back into town. And they're like, no, you don't understand. You need to get on steroids today. Like, we can't tell you, like, if you don't get on steroids today, like, you will die today. But they were like, if you don't get on steroids, you will die. And so it was like a big, like, wake up call. So like, got started on hydrocortisone and everything. And then it was, I think, a few weeks after that I got the diagnosis of AMN, because that was a much longer process. I had to get an MRI. They looked at, the specific genetic mutation that we already knew that we had in my family. And I don't remember exactly what that process was like, but long story short, I got the diagnosis of AMN probably a month after that.
Well, thank goodness your wife had the background and insight to push you to get to the doctor.
Yeah.
Yay, Katie.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there were signs of it earlier, like, so obviously my mom is a symptomatic female with ALD, and one of her most, pronounced symptoms is that her legs will spasm involuntarily. And I mean, they had been doing this for years and years. And she's taken a medication that has helped with that. But as I was in my 20s, my legs started doing that same thing. And I remember my dad looking at that, and he was like, Aaron, like, your legs spasm the same way that your mom's do. And he was just like, I wonder if, you maybe have ALD too. But it was not until my wife was like, you need to go to the doctor, find out. Like, and there were a lot of other symptoms as well.
Oh, so we have AMN now. So then what?
Yeah.
What is going on in the brain? What did we Google it, or what do we do?
I mean, I know I listened to the first episode that the two of you released. And so, there's a lot of connecting fibers between your story and mine, Ken. Like, I think one of the things that you mentioned is nobody prepares you for it. I mean, you go to the doctor's appointment, they tell you, okay, you've got this thing. And then it's like, okay, what now? And there's not a great, at least in mainstream medicine, outside of the ALD specialists, the average doctor, whether they're a GP, whether they're even a neurologist, like, they don't have any kind of guidebook to give you of how is this going to affect your life? Where do we go from here? There's nothing like that. You're kind of left on your own. And Christie, you shared too. I mean, kind of going down that that Google rabbit trail of, feeling compelled to do the research on your own. And that was me too. Because I already had the family history, I knew quite a bit about how this disease can manifest itself. I was already experiencing a lot of the neurological symptoms already, but I had also seen my grandfather as he had grown older with AMN, and how it, significantly affected his life, and how it eventually, eventually took his life. Like, as far as we know, he never developed cerebral disease, but he passed away when he was 67. And I think it was just due to a confluence of symptoms of AMN, where we know AMN just kind of ages you prematurely.
Right.
And so, it just took a lot out of him, and he just gradually kind of grew weaker and weaker. So I had seen that. I had seen him pass away from AMN. And so it's just kind of like, wow, what is my story going to be?
Yeah. Obviously that probably amplified what your thought process was about AMN and what your future's like, I'm assuming, or did you just,
Yeah, I started, obviously I did lots of research. I'm a very data and information driven person. Yeah. I've always wanted to know. And I actually found a man. So I live about 40 minutes south of Seattle in Washington State. And I found, and I was just Googling, I was like, okay, adrenomyeloneuropathy, Seattle, let's see what comes up. And so I found a guy who had a blog, who had AMN and who lived in Seattle. So I reached out to him and I was like, hey, can we meet up for lunch sometime and just talk about this? Because and he was a little bit older. And he was like, yeah, absolutely. And so we met up, and he was the first person that I'd ever met outside of my family who had ALD. And it was so good. It was amazing. We went out to this Thai food restaurant, halfway between where the two of us lived. And I was just able to ask him questions about, his progression with the disease. What does this actually look like? When did you decide to start using a wheelchair? All of the things. And so that was kind of the start of the journey of recognizing that we can't do this in isolation. We need to do this in community and in connection with other people who are living with this disease.
100%.
Yeah, that's a great point. So that started, it sounds like, this connection with somebody who had sort of been there, done that, and was managing his own path. And then what else, what other people have you connected with, or did you connect with that felt meaningful to you and gave you a sense of community?
Yeah. So one of the things that I resonated with in Ken's story that he shared last week was, it feels like all of us go through a really, really dark season for a while. And I definitely did. And interestingly for me, it was not immediately after my diagnosis. It was, and so my diagnosis was about 10 and a half years ago. And it wasn't immediately after that. It honestly took about a year and a half after my diagnosis for things to fully kick in, where I was like, wow, this is really, here for the long haul. And I, aside from having met with that other man who had AMN as well, I really hadn't made any other connections. I hadn't met with any specialists. And my local neurologist, who I was seeing at the time, he was not very good, and he really had no idea what he was talking about. He was not able to differentiate between AMN and adult cerebral ALD, which is much more rapidly progressive, degenerative. And so at the time, I kind of thought, wow, this is a death sentence. And because he had not explained to me, right, you can have AMN without, developing adult cerebral ALD. And even with my family history, it just, the differentiation between the phenotypes was not something that I had a really clear understanding of. And so I was in a really, really dark place about 9 years ago, and it was miserable. I mean, I was not sleeping. I was it just didn't feel like I had a really good handle on the, lived out effects and symptoms of ALD, AMN. And I was in a really, really, really bad place for a while. And, this is to answer, I know this is a little bit, longer of an explanation, Christie, but like, this is getting to answer your question. It was at that time that I really realized, like, I need to see a specialist to really have my questions answered by somebody who knows this disease inside and out. And so my wife and I decided to travel to Kennedy Krieger Institute in Baltimore, and we met with Dr. Ali Fatimi, who's one of the leading experts and specialists on ALD. And so we did that. That was about 8.5 years ago, and it was great. I mean, it was a really, really good experience. Dr. Fatimi was amazing. Like, they put you through these clinic visits throughout the day. And so you're meeting with a neurologist, you're meeting with a genetic counselor, you're meeting with a physical therapist, you're meeting with an endocrinologist. They kind of put you through all of it. And I like to share this story to kind of like brag on Dr. Fatimi and the kind of person that he is. We had a visit with him earlier in the day, and while I was able to get a lot of my questions answered, it didn't feel like it was enough time. And my wife and I shared that with him, and he was like, you know what? I really want to make sure that this visit is valuable to you, and that you really are able to get all of the really critical, pertinent questions answered. And so he's like, I will come back at the end of the day and meet with you guys again. And he did. And that meant so much to me, because it was just like this personal touch of like, what, here's a neurologist who really has a good understanding of this disease, how it can progress and everything. And it was like, I'm in your corner. And so that was a really, really, really big deal to me.
Amazing.
So
Yeah.
And the really cool thing is that, having made deeper connections with the ALD community, having gone to conferences and, meetings and stuff like that, I mean, you're able to build relationships with people over time. And so thank you for sharing this picture. So this is a picture from the ALD. So ALD Connect, as I know you two talked about last week, is an organization that really seeks to connect the community of ALD, whether it's patients, family members, providers, researchers, bringing all of these people together. And so this was at the annual meeting for ALD Connect 2 years ago in Houston. And these are all men who have AMN. And it's just like a brotherhood. Like, it's an amazing opportunity to be able to connect with people. But I was kind of sharing anecdotally. So I went to another conference this last summer that was in Chicago through an organization called ULF, the United Leukodystrophy Foundation. And Dr. Fatimi was one of the people who was there. And there was one of the nights that we were there, we were just hanging out at the restaurant bar and just chatting just like for hours about, not even about ALD, but about our families, about, healthcare in general, about, the state of politics in the United States. And like, it's just amazing. Like, if you had told me 8.5 years ago, when I first saw Dr. Fatimi in clinic, like years from now, you're just going to be sitting at a bar, just like, shooting the breeze with this person. Like, it's amazing. And what a blessing that we're able to make those connections.
Those are great connections. Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's so important when you're managing this difficult diagnosis to have someone you trust, somebody who you can connect with on a level from, patient to doctor, but also on a personal level too. I think that's really important. Yeah.
And I cannot say enough about ALD Connect as an organization. There's so much that I can say about that. whether it is, community Zoom calls where, I'm able to video chat with other men with AMN and talk about the nitty gritty of living with this disease, or, finding out about, clinical trials that are happening, progress that's happening in research, going to, the annual meetings. Like I went to, the first one that I went to was 2 years ago in Houston, and then I went to the one a year ago, which was in Washington, D.C. And truthfully, they are like the best weekends of my entire life. Like they're definitely up there, just because you feel seen and appreciated and loved and valued, and like you are able to be a part of this community where you don't have to give an explanation for where you are at in your lived out experience. Like it is understood, it is accepted, it is, and your experience is valued.
Yeah.
So I was gonna go. So we have AMN. Obviously, there's some setbacks in AMN. What did you do to, as far as adjusting and adapting to AMN, whether it's bowel or not? Well, not really related to bowel, but like gait balance or gait balance, recreation. We know you have some recreation stories, so I think it'd be a cool time to talk about that now. Just to
man. There are symptoms that we are able to find help with. And at least in my case, there's other symptoms where I've never been able to find anything that helps. So, for example, like I have really severe chronic neuropathic pain in my feet and lower legs. And, it can feel like electrical shocks, or it can feel like stabbing. My legs, jerk and spasm on their own, which is really painful too. And I've tried everything. I've tried every classification of medication that could potentially treat that, and nothing has helped. I even had a spinal cord stimulator implanted in my spine several years ago that they thought might be able to like break up the signal, the pain signals. And unfortunately that didn't help either. And so I ended up having it removed. And so now I really just live with that to the best of my abilities. But there are other things, as you mentioned, where like we really can find tools or strategies that really do help. So with mobility issues, I mean, as we all know, mobility issues is one of the biggest symptoms of living with ALD, both for men and for a lot of symptomatic women too. I mean, my mom and both of my aunts both have, balance issues, spasticity, mobility issues. And so, I started off walking with a cane, and I still do for shorter distances, but I use a wheelchair as well. And for me, it really just kind of depends on, what is the tool for the job? Like, I've never really seen the cane or the wheelchair as a hindrance. What I tried to tell people is like, my hindrance is my lack of natural mobility. That is the hindrance. The cane or the wheelchair is a tool that helps me be able to be as mobile as I can be and, do what I want to do, get where I want to go. And so, so if I'm going short distances, I'm using the cane. If I'm going longer distances, I'm using my wheelchair.
Makes sense. Definitely.
Yeah, and I like, just going back to what you said earlier, just that you're open-minded about treating the symptoms, and you'll try really anything. And I'm wondering, like, if there was one symptom that you wanted clinicians, industry to focus on, what would it be? Like, if you had got to like flip a switch and turn off something for yourself, for others that you've connected with, what might it be?
That's deep.
I'm sorry, it's only one. I mean, I could have said top 3. I don't know. I'm just,
top. Yeah, you got to go top because it's hard to place probably a top. But
I'm really not trying to be difficult, Chrissy, because that's a great question. I don't think that I can pick just one, honestly.
So you don't get any. Just kidding.
It is.
No. If you could, I mean, I said one, but maybe top 2, 3.
Yeah.
You know, what are the worst things? What are the most like debilitating things on a daily basis that you have to manage? That it would just be a life changer, game changer if you could halt progression or reverse progression of whatever the symptoms.
I mean, like, I know we've talked about, I know that you guys are planning on doing like a below the belt episode at some time. And like, honestly, the below the belt stuff is probably the biggest one just because, so like, I mean, mobility stuff is obviously huge. Like I would love to not have mobility issues, but the mobility issues can be lived with easier than the situation like where you're out and about and you're like, oh my gosh, I need to find a bathroom right now. And I know that like all three of us like experience that. That's a huge one. And there are things that you can do to help. So what we're talking about, I mean, we're talking about urinary issues, we're talking about bowel issues, and there are things that I have found, for both of those that, really do help. Whether it's, bowel habits, routines. I take a medication that helps with like urinary urgency and frequency, and it does help, but it's not a perfect solution. Like I usually tell my urologist, like it probably helps about 50%, which is significant, but it's not a fix.
Sure.
And, so like that's honestly probably one of the biggest things. Like I have a lot of anxiety about like flying on a plane because it's like 2 lavatories in the back of the plane, and what if like suddenly I need to go like really bad and they're both taken. Like so there's a lot of anxiety with stuff like that.
Thank you for opening up and sharing about that. As uncomfortable as it can be, we are covering uncomfortable subjects here.
We are.
On No Limit.
It's hobbling to get to the back of the airplane. I'm just because I always try to sit the closer to the front of the plane just so I don't have to hobble so much on, and then hopefully I don't need to. So but for me though, again, this story is really not about me. But I find like when I'm sitting, especially like it like cuts off. Literally, I mean you'll feel it, but it like cuts off my bladder almost like. So I'm like I'm not really gonna have any accidents or anything until I stand up. It's like almost like it cuts that all off. That's a below the belt, but yeah. So I got some tips up there too. So that's me. But we're trying to
just stay seated.
Yes, we're connecting the dots here. But yeah, no, definitely. I can see traveling being
So the bladder bowel dysfunction.
Yeah.
Got it, everyone?
I think that probably is the biggest because we all pretty much have less control of that. And
yeah. And I mean, for people who are not knowledgeable about this, I mean, I'll just briefly explain. So, ALD, it affects the nerves throughout the body and, that are, through the central nervous system. That's why a lot of us have neuropathic pain. That's why, our legs might jolt and spasm. That's why we have spasticity. That's why we have balance issues. But
yeah. So thinking about ALD, but not thinking about ALD, we want to get to know you a little bit more. Like tell us about if you're comfortable, your family life, your siblings, your children, your wife. We want to hear about those who love and support you and those who you love and support.
Yeah. Right. I kind of thought that we were going to start with this. We're kind of doing a different format, but no, this is fine. So Ken, would you mind pulling up the picture of my family and me? So this is my immediate family. So I'm married to a wonderful woman named Katie. And then I have
everyone.
Yes.
So beautiful.
Oh, she's gorgeous. And then I have an 8-year-old daughter named Isabella and a 5-year-old son named Isaac. He actually just turned 5 on Thanksgiving. this year.
Happy birthday, Isaac.
Yeah.
And Christie, your son is 5'2", right?
Yes, and my daughter is 8. So
yeah, I know.
yes.
We have kids like almost like the exact same age. So.
Yeah, almost identical. Yeah. And I'm always, as you guys know, interested in the girls with ALD experience and how families talk about that with their children, and and what support you seek to help them understand and help you understand.
Yeah, so this is actually a really good point. So I know that I mentioned earlier that my daughter, did inherit the X chromosome from me, because ALD is an X-linked genetic disorder, and so she has the gene mutation on one of her X chromosomes. I want to be a little bit cautious because we have not had the big conversation with our daughter yet about how this may affect her in the future. And that I've sought the advice of several young women who grew up, with the family history, and asking them, when they were told, and like, would you have wanted to be told at a younger age or not? And so I actually, I think you both might know Taylor Kane, who runs an organization called Remember the Girls, which is specifically highlighting females and their experience with X-linked disorders, which often get neglected or forgotten. And I think that it's such vital work. And so I actually went on to her podcast, I think it was about 1.5 years ago, specifically to talk about my daughter and being the father of a girl who has this inherited, genetic disorder as well. While understanding that, like, at this point, she's completely pre-symptomatic. Like, it really doesn't affect her life at all at this point. But yeah, we're probably, my wife and I talk about this, and we're probably going to wait a few more years before having this big conversation with her. But the advice that I've received from some of these young women with ALD, and from my sister, who was diagnosed, like, I think she was 18 or 19 when she received her diagnosis, and she wishes that she had found out before that. So they've all recommended, start having conversations with your daughter right now about the family involvement, that, like, this is a disorder that affects so many people in the family. This affects your grandma. This obviously affects your dad. This affects, your cousin. This affects, 2 of your great aunts and some of your dad's cousins. And then, really, highlighting the fact that, like, this is a family thing. This is a shared family thing. And then when we do have that big conversation with her a couple of years down the road, hopefully she will be able to see it as not something that is isolating. Like, I'm sure that it will be difficult for her. But she'll be able to understand, like, I have support. I have a lot of people in the family who understand this. And, there are people that I can put her in connection with, other young women. I could put her in contact with you, Christie. And are
you calling me young? Oh my goodness.
I think you're young. And yeah, so
thanks for sharing that. I think it's definitely an interesting conversation. And, I've heard from different families saying, we're going to tell our daughter when she's of childbearing age, or we're going to tell our daughter, like, down the road. And there's other families in the camp of, like, I'm just going to pepper things in conversations and see what questions come up. And there's no right way. There's no perfect way. Each family has to decide for themselves. So thank you for sharing kind of your view and Katie's view and talking to her about it.
Yeah. One other thing that I will add to that, I agree with you 100% that, like, this is a personal thing, and this is something that, like, every family needs to decide for themselves. I personally feel strongly that, like, it's important to have that conversation before a daughter, like, reaches puberty, so that she is informed. Because, again, I think that information is really, really important. And so, that's the decision that we're making for our family.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing.
Yeah. So, sorry, go ahead, Christie.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, continue. Tell us more about your family, more
Yeah,
about
so
got more family.
So like I shared earlier, so we live a little bit south of Seattle. We live between Seattle and Tacoma, for anybody who's familiar with Washington State. And I'm a stay-at-home dad to my 2 kids. I have been since my daughter was born 8 years ago, and it is not what I had planned on doing with my life. I had a career in advertising. And I also worked in office administration for a couple of different businesses prior to my diagnosis. But after I was diagnosed, and just with the, accumulation of all of the symptoms and everything like that, I applied for Social Security disability insurance several years ago. And so I was approved for that. And so while, of course, that's not where I thought that my life was going to go, there are good things that come out of that too, because it does allow me to be able to spend more time, with my children, being their primary caretaker. And my wife being a nurse, she only works 3 or 4 days a week. Like, her schedule alternates between working 3 days a week, 1 week, and 4 days a week on alternating weeks. And so it gives us extra days together as a family, which is something that I value so much.
Absolutely.
Wow, what an amazing opportunity.
Yeah.
I'm always trying to shed my kids and no, just kidding. Find babysitters, no, I'm just kidding. But no, what a unique opportunity to be able to spend that time with your kids and your wife when she has time off. That's great.
Yeah. So a lot of people who are in the ALD community, I mean, they know about my immediate family because I've been able to share on patient panels and in Zoom meetings and stuff like that. But a lot of people don't know about my extended family. So this picture that Ken pulled up, this is me and 10 of my 11 siblings. So I have 11 brothers and sisters. I'm the second oldest of 12 siblings in my family. And 3 of us are biological. And then 9 of my siblings were adopted. So 6 of my siblings were adopted from Ethiopia, and then 1 each from China, Russia, and India. One of my sisters is not pictured in this photo, but all the rest of us are there. And so, it's a crazy family. My parents, they kind of caught the adoption bug. I grew up overseas. I grew up in Taiwan. My dad was teaching at an American school in Taiwan when I was a boy, and we kept hearing about China's one-child policy that they had at the time. And so my parents found out about this Chinese girl. They decided to adopt her, and then, they kind of, once you get involved in like the world of adoption, you keep hearing stories about, different children. And so my parents would hear stories about children that just had like these remarkable stories. And they were like, wow, like they really need a home. So like, why don't we bring them into our family? And it's not the choice that I would make for myself. Like, I don't think that I could adopt, 9 children. Like, that's a lot, but I really admire for,
absolutely.
For their hearts, for these kids.
Incredible.
So it's been amazing to grow up in a family that has, a real diversity of ethnicities and of backgrounds. And that's been a real blessing too, just to kind of like expand my experience from in a way that I would never have experienced otherwise.
Okay, we'll put this up here. Tell us about your recreation on what you've done with AMN and how to, stay active.
Yeah. So this is a picture of me and one of my sisters, my sister Deborah. Adaptive sports is something that I got into probably 6 years ago. And for me, it was primarily wheelchair basketball and then hand cycling as well. And I've done some other adaptive sports as well. I've done some stuff with like wheelchair tennis. I've tried wheelchair pickleball as well. But wheelchair basketball was really my thing. And it was a huge part of my life for like 5 years. And, I was played on a couple of different, competitive teams, traveling to tournaments. It's a pretty serious thing. So there's an organization called the National Wheelchair Basketball Association. They have teams all around the country. There's teams in Canada as well. I know that there's teams in, other countries as well, because I know you probably have viewership in other parts of the world. I know England has a very robust wheelchair basketball community and programs. And I've kind of taken a step back from wheelchair basketball for the last year and a half, just as my children have gotten older. It's just something that I've recognized, shouldn't be as big of a part of my life, because like, if you are playing competitively, you are traveling to tournaments for like a 3-day weekend, pretty much once a month for like 7 months out of the year. Like, it's a pretty big deal. And our son, who is 5, he was diagnosed with autism about a year and a half ago. And we had known even before his diagnosis that he had some developmental delays. And I just made the decision, like, it's not right for me to be away from the family for these long weekends for so much of the year, at least for this stage of life. It's just not a priority, to me. The priority is making sure that, our son is being taken care of. And that has been, a major, shift for our family's lives. And it affects our family substantially. I mean, taking care of a child who has really significant special needs of his own. It's a challenge.
Yeah, that's a big deal. And, thanks for sharing that. And, I think being a parent myself and, sacrificing something like that you enjoy for your, to be a bigger and more present support for your child is such a huge thing. So I really admire your, willingness to do that. And how lucky of, for your son to have you as a dad.
Thank you.
Really.
Thank you. I wrote a post on Facebook a month or two ago. It wasn't that long ago, and it was speaking to the challenges of caring for a really high need child while also living with a physical disability myself. That's a really challenging thing, and it's not something that is talked about super often. Because parenting, as we know, is challenging on its own. Like, raising kids is just a difficult thing. And then raising kids who have special needs is a really challenging thing on its own. And then adding to that, my own physical disability, that's a really hard thing too. And so I was writing about, if we're at a park, if I'm using my wheelchair, I can usually keep up with my child, but not if he runs into areas that I can't go to. And if I'm using cane, there's no way I can keep up with him, because I literally physically cannot run. There's no way. And so there's been lots of times where, I've been at a park with my kids and I've had to call out to my daughter, Isabella, go run and grab your brother, really quick. And there's places that we go where he really does know his boundaries. There's parks that we go to that are fully fenced in. And so he's not going to be able to go anywhere. But it's scary sometimes. And, I have to know where he is at every moment and really keep an eye on him. And, and there's not a lot of people that I am connected with who have that shared experience.
Yeah. That's a double decker. Now, we talked a little bit briefly, which I'm going to put this picture up there. I just want you to explain this photo to everyone, and just this photo, you started telling me about it. This tells a lot. What this is, your AMN.
Yeah. So this picture was taken on the last morning at the ALD Connect conference that was in Houston 2 years ago, because I took a whole bunch of pictures at that conference. I mean, I took pictures with Ken and with Christie and with, tons of other people. And it was amazing. Like I said, I'm not exaggerating when I say this. So that was the first conference that I had ever gone to for ALD Connect. And truthfully, it was one of the best weekends of my entire life. Like, without exaggeration, it was amazing just to be surrounded by people, like I shared earlier, who just like, they understand, they get your experience, they are there. And it was amazing. And so many happy pictures, so many happy memories and experiences. But this was the very last picture that I shared. Like, I made a Facebook post of photos from that weekend. And this was the last picture that I shared. And I said, I know that this might sound really weird to some people, but I share this picture for a really important reason. And it's because as you look at these other photos, you see like the best of me. Like, you see me smiling and I am a happy person. Like, I have a good life in a lot of ways. You see me surrounded by these friends, that I've been able to build relationships with through the ALD community, and they are good things. But this picture and this reality cannot be ignored. This is a picture that I took of myself the Sunday morning, which was the last day there at the conference in Houston, and I woke up and I felt like death. Like, there is no other way to describe it. And I hadn't been drinking alcohol the night before. Like, I hadn't stayed up crazy late the night before. Like, this was just a normal morning waking up. The truth is, sleep is completely unrefreshing for me. I wake up every single morning feeling worse than I did the night before. And then I gradually start to feel a little bit better, a little bit more energized, a little bit less fatigued as the day goes on.
Yeah.
But this is the reality where you wake up and you're just like, I just feel absolutely awful. And I don't want to miss that like, this is there are things that people can look at where they can see you, Ken, walking with your rollator, and they'd be like, okay, guy obviously has mobility issues. It's very plain to see. They would see me walking with a cane, or they would see me, pushing in my wheelchair, and they would, immediately know the same thing. But there are so many things that are behind the surface that most people would never be able to tell. Go ahead, Ken.
I was just going to say, even with seeing what you're seeing, it's not all rainbows and butterflies. What it may look like, there's always something behind it. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
You.
I was just going to say, humans are complicated, right? We don't operate on one mode at all of the time. And I would look at you guys and say, I would describe you both as really positive people, and I always think of that as a good thing. And the reality is, I think of myself as positive too. Okay, we're in the positive club, we're in the positive bubble here, but the reality is, right, life is not all, like Ken said, rainbows and butterflies. There is complications, there is pain, there is mental health stuff, the ups and downs of life in general, and then add the other difficulties like having AMN, having a child with special needs. All of that can rise to the top.
But look at this picture. These people are
oh my goodness. That was one of the happy pictures.
It was.
I feel like I looked a lot younger in that picture than I do now.
I think this one was taken a year ago at the.
That was in GC. That was what I was. That was the night I was having every drink on the menu. That was a bad night for me.
That was the night we invented the ALD mocktail.
ALD mocktail, yes.
Healthy mocktail.
I mean, meeting the two of you it's another thing that I can't overstate. I mean, it has meant so much to me. It's nice to know that I have people that I can reach out to at any time, for support, to talk with. Ken and I talk on the phone, not like a ton, but or we'll text, or, but it's always there. And, Christie, I will never forget, like, the first time you and I met in Houston, you almost immediately were like, Aaron, you're my ALD brother.
That's right.
That's just so sweet.
Yeah. I think you make connections even through, a screen, then a lot more, I think, with this, just because it's relatable, we're all in it together. So when you see them in person, it's like, it's not like it's the first time we met, that's cool too,
Yeah. It feels like a reunion because, you're seeing these people over screens throughout the year. It's amazing when we all get to come together.
Yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
And what's amazing too is that I had men in my life who, older men with AMN who had experienced this disease longer, who were really, really influential to me. I know I shared with you, the man that I met up with in Seattle, and there was another man who sadly he passed away from adult cerebral ALD a couple of years ago. His name was Steve Good, and he was one of those people, like, I don't think that I would have made it through that really, really dark season without him and some other people being a really strong encouragement in my life. And then, of course, I mean, I love everybody who's in the ALD community, and there's nothing that I would not do for somebody who's in the community. But I've been able to serve as a peer mentor to other people as well. And, I think I'm currently connected with three other men who, one is my age and then two are just a little bit younger than me. And to be able to give back to other people in the ALD community and, be able to answer their questions, and just say, there's nothing off limits. Like, you can ask me anything. And to be able to support them in their journeys with their stories, it's just great that, like, we have the opportunity to do that. And I know that that's something that I think both of you have done that as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. I mentor my mentors again. I've kind of get them, and then I kind of, not that I don't ever talk to them again, but a lot of time I'll get them to, like, the men's Facebook group, or, get them in with ALD Connect. We talk a little bit otherwise, but it's just like, I feel like I'm more of like a transition. Like I'm an easy landing. We have initial talks, and and I kind of push them into where they should be, and which is cool.
Yes, and I am a peer mentor to other moms in the community whose children have been diagnosed with newborn screen. And, we have a community call as well through ALD Connect. It's so important. And, newly diagnosed families who tune into that, I think, find, that they are not alone. And so that's one of our messages too, is we want people with ALD to know that they're not alone, that our experiences. Can you hear my son in the back? That's my very healthy 5-year-old son who has adrenal insufficiency, but is otherwise a real Spitfire. Okay. He's probably yelling at his Nintendo right now, but just to say that, the point of us getting together is to share stories and to understand that we are together in this. And we really loved having you here, Aaron, to tell your story and share your experience. We're grateful for your friendship and your presence in the community.
Thank you.
Okay, Aaron, here's a big question for you. If you could live one day without ALD, what's the first thing you would do?
I love this question. I think this is a question that you should ask every single one of your interviewees with ALD. I would run. Like, when I read this question on like the pre-interview list, I was like, That is like the clearest answer ever. And I would run on the beach. Like when I was in high school, I used to run cross country, and like running on the beach was amazing. And when I see somebody out running, like I was driving down the road the other day and I saw a guy, running with his shirt off on the sidewalk, and I was just like, I wish that I could do that. That would be so nice to be able to do. And there's a lot of things that involve, having access to full mobility that I would do. I mean, I would play able-bodied basketball. I would play able-bodied soccer. I would probably try to climb a climbing wall. Like, there's a lot of things that I would do with my legs, like that, I'm not able to do anymore.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'm with you. Yeah, dig those toes right down into the sand, be able to lift it right back up with no issues. Oh, absolutely. Keep going.
I would run for miles.
Motivating me.
Like I would run until I literally like fell over in exhaustion.
Yeah.
That is what I would do with that day.
Yeah.
Something not to take for granted for those of us who can walk and run. So appreciate that answer very much.
Yeah,
I better get moving.
Yeah, Christie. Yes, absolutely. I have this could be a fun new segment, everyone. This goes all ALT, it goes bladder. But now that we've sat here and talked for about an hour, who has to pee? Is there
ever a time when I don't have to pee? I don't know.
Yeah, but yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you taking the time, and you're setting the standard for future guests here. I mean, not everyone's the same, but I think that was a great talk. So
that's great, and thanks to our listeners for tuning in and learning more about Aaron and his story and ALD in general.
I just want to say to the two of you, I mean, I really sincerely appreciate the opportunity to be able to come on here. I mean, like I said earlier, I fully support, the work that the two of you are doing. I think that this podcast is really going to take off and will be of value to people who, have ALD themselves, but also other people. I mean, family members. I hope that the two of you are able to get some of the providers, some of the ALD experts or specialists on, and just kind of, be able to ask them the questions about like, how did you, become so, enraptured by this particular, disease or disorder. I mean, I think that there's some really fascinating things that you guys are going to be able to draw out from people.
absolutely, that's the hope. All things ALT, and that's included. So for sure.
Thank you for being here with us today, and like and subscribe to our channel.
Absolutely. Thank you. Bye, everybody.